Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new animated storybook explainer. Today, we're going on a journey back in time, opening up the pages of a classic tale. We're going to meet our hero, a young woman named Jane, right at the exact moment she wakes up on her very first morning in a strange, enormous new place called Thornfield. It's a story all about figuring out exactly where you belong.
So, I want you to really picture this for a second. Have you ever moved to a brand new place, or maybe started at a brand new school, and just laid in bed wondering exactly who you are going to meet that day? Now imagine waking up in a giant echoing castle, all by yourself, miles and miles away from anyone you know. Well, that's exactly how Jane is feeling right now. Her heart is pounding, the house is completely quiet, and she has a big, big day ahead of her.
Let's open up our storybook and take a quick look at the exciting chapters we're going to explore today. We've got a brand new home, exploring the giant manor, the friendly housekeeper, a little girl from France, songs, stories, and school, and finally, the real meaning of comfort.
Chapter 1, A Brand New Home. The sun is just starting to peek through the curtains as our story begins. Jane rises from her bed and, honestly, she's feeling a little bit small and pretty nervous. She looks in the mirror and kind of wishes she was taller or maybe had rosy cheeks. But she shakes off those worries. She brushes her hair perfectly smooth and puts on her simple black frock. Even though it's plain, she makes sure it fits nicely and looks completely neat. She really wants to make a good first impression on whoever she's about to meet downstairs.
And that brings us to our very first vocabulary minigame of the day. As Jane is picking out her dress, our story mentions she had no article of attire that wasn't extremely simple. Attire is just a fancy way of saying clothes, especially fine or formal ones. So when you put on your favorite outfit for a special occasion, you are choosing your attire.
Chapter 2, Exploring the Giant Manor.
Jane takes a deep breath, opens her bedroom door, and bravely steps out into her new world. She walks down a long gallery and climbs down these slippery dark oak stairs. She passes by a huge, curiously carved clock and paintings of grim men in armor. Everything feels so grand and, well, kind of imposing. But then, she steps over the threshold and out the front door. The early autumn sun is shining brightly, and she finally gets a good look at the giant three-story house she's living in.
Ding, ding, ding. It's time for another pop-up vocabulary word. This giant house Jane is staring at is actually called a manor. A manor is a very large estate or a grand gentleman's house. This one even has battlements around the top that make it look almost like a real castle.
Jane looks out past the lawn and sees these vast, quiet hills surrounding the manor. There's a big meadow, an array of mighty old thorn trees, which is actually why it's called Thornfield, and a huge flock of birds called rooks flying up above and cawing in the sky. It's beautiful, for sure, but as Jane looks around, she thinks about how incredibly lonely it must be to live in this giant place all alone.
Chapter 3, The Friendly Housekeeper. So Jane is enjoying the fresh air when suddenly she hears a voice right behind her. Someone has appeared at the door. Now there is a huge difference between what Jane expected to happen and what actually happened. Jane was totally bracing herself to meet a terrifying, strict, fancy owner of the house. She thought she was going to have to bow and be incredibly formal. But the reality? She turns around to find Mrs. Fairfax, a sweet, kind, ordinary widow who is simply the manager of the house. Jane instantly feels this massive wave of relief. They're equals. Mrs. Fairfax greets her with the absolute warmest smile and says, "What? Out already? You are an early riser. How do you like Thornfield?" She gives Jane an incredibly kind welcome, treating her like a friend right from the very start.
And this perfectly leads us to our next vocabulary word. The story describes Mrs. Fairfax as an affable widow. Affable means sociable, amiable, and extremely friendly. It's the absolute best kind of person to meet when you're feeling nervous in a brand new place. Mrs. Fairfax wasn't a scary boss at all. She was wonderfully affable.
Chapter 4, A Little Girl from France. Just as Jane is finally feeling comfortable, the energy shifts way up because a brand new character is about to burst onto the scene. Running up the lawn comes a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, wearing a pink hat with an absolute cascade of curls falling all the way down to her waist. This is Adele, and she is the young girl Jane has been hired to teach.
Mrs. Fairfax introduces them, and suddenly Adele starts chattering away in fluent French. Jane, who luckily learned French from a teacher for 7 years, answers her right back.
Adele's eyes just light up and she excitedly claps her hands, saying, "Ah, you speak my language as well as Mr. Rochester does. I can talk to you as I can to him." She is absolutely thrilled to have someone to talk to in her native language.
And this brilliantly shows how quickly a connection can be made. Over breakfast, Adele just doesn't stop talking. She tells Jane these funny, rapid-fire stories about traveling across the sea in a great ship that had a chimney that smoked. She talks about landing in a huge, dark city and how Mr. Rochester had to carry her over a plank to the land. She brings so much life and laughter to this big, quiet house.
Chapter 5: Songs, Stories, and School.
After breakfast, it's time for Jane to officially start her new job as a teacher. They head into the grand library. But before any serious schoolwork begins, Adele wants to put on a show. She climbs down from her chair, sits right on Jane's knee, and sings this beautiful song from an opera. As soon as she finishes, she jumps off Jane's knee, folds her little hands demurely, and announces, "Now, mademoiselle, I will repeat you some poetry." She recites a whole fable about rats, complete with dramatic gestures and perfect punctuation.
Time for one last vocabulary word. Despite all her theatrical energy and singing, Jane notes that when it was finally time to look at some books, Adele was surprisingly docile. Docile means obedient or willing to be taught. Jane realizes she doesn't need to push her too hard on the very first day. They talk, read a little, and then Jane even draws some little sketches for her to color.
Chapter 6: The Real Meaning of Comfort.
Let's see how all of this builds to the true moral of our storybook adventure today. Think about everything Jane discovered on this first day. She woke up, terrified in a giant, imposing, lonely house. But by the afternoon, she had found a kind housekeeper who treated her like an equal, and a fun, talented little student whose stories brought joy to the whole room. Her scary morning turned into an incredibly wonderful day.
So, the absolutely crucial moral of our story is right here. True comfort comes not from luxury, but from kindness and being accepted for who you are. Jane didn't feel happy because the house was a grand manor or because the furniture was fancy. She felt happy because Mrs. Fairfax was affable and because little Adele accepted her. It's the people, not the giant house, that truly make a home. And that leaves us with a really important question for you to think about. How can you make someone feel accepted when they come to a brand new place? The next time a new kid walks into your classroom looking just as nervous as Jane did in that giant castle, what can you do to be their Mrs. Fairfax? Thanks for opening up the Storybook Explainer with me today. Stay curious, keep being kind, and I'll see you on the next adventure.